Hello, Falsius Jock. Welcome to Shortgrass, your Kildare Nationalist sports podcast, where we have a good look at all things sport in County Kildare, with particular emphasis on the Kildare GAA Championships. I'm Pat Costello. Only three wheels on our wagon this week. We've given Richard the episode off. So let's say hello to Ger McNally and Tommy O'Connell. Welcome, lads, on this momentous week when they made the announcement that the O'Byrne Cup is to return for January 2026. We're all happy about that, yeah?
First January of the year on a very cold January afternoon on the World Cup type. You missed it last year.
Great news, Pat. Great news. As a supporter, I mean, like even when remember the O'Byrne Cup used to start in December.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. You're getting inter-county football before Christmas. And I know people say like, the players don't want it, and no, teams don't want it, and people are annoyed because matches are cancelled and teams give walkovers, which obviously should never happen in the county. But again, for me, I'm being selfish that I want to see Kildare, who's in with a chance of being involved with Kildare when the league comes around. And so brilliant, great news, Pat.
Well, isn't it typical of the GAA? Sorry, that we have the 1 year that we might do it out the O'Byrne Cup is the year they brought in the near 50 rule changes, and the year that's probably needed more than ever. That would be absolutely very typical of the GAA.
Well, I know some managers who decried the fact that the O'Byrne Cup aren't all pre-season provincial championships were abandoned last year. But then speaking to some of them after January coming into the league, they were saying, "Oh no, it's the best thing that ever happened because at least then we could have specific friendly games or challenge games, and it wasn't a case of teams opting out of the pre-season competition." So you don't know what to make of it all.
No, maybe that Galway pre-season, because that was such a huge event. I mean, that was obviously the opening, the proper opening of St. Conleth's Park, but it was against a Galway team coming off the back of an All-Ireland final that, in fairness, were fairly stacked with stars that day. Maybe that match was the best way to prepare for the league, rather than, a couple of hundred people at a match in Carlow or Longford, or and then it turns into a farce come semi-final time when clubs that want to play. So yeah, there is that side of it as well, definitely.
Anyway, lads, that doesn't happen until January. There was a lot of sport over the last week or so, and there's going to be another sport coming up as well. First of all, let's have a look at the Joe Mallow Motors Senior Football Championship quarterfinals. We have the results there if I can just find them. Last weekend, of course, the first match out was Cara and Athy, so it was Athy 3-7. Cara 10 points. Then we had Clane and Naas, with Naas winning that one 122 to 13 points. On Sunday, then we had Selbridge and Moorfield. Selbridge 319, Moorfield 116, and then finally Sarsfields and Johnstown Bridge with the Sash winning 221 to 217, and that one didn't look possible at one stage. Let's go back at the very start here. Cara and Athy, people who thought that maybe this might be an easy one for Athy. Well, it wasn't, I suppose, for a lot of the game, but they did win quite easily in the end.
Yeah, look, we probably will focus on the four winners and, those mouth-watering semi-finals that are to come before that. But Cara did have a really special mention because I thought they were fabulous against Athy. They played a real kind of entertaining, attacking brand of football, and they ran the ball well. They put Athy under an awful lot of pressure. Yeah, you can say Athy probably didn't play to the level that they will aspire to get to for the semi-finals. But, I think a lot of that was down to the way Cara played, and it's been a fantastic year for them. Obviously, we spoke about them in previous weeks. To win those three group games in Group D was, it was a fantastic return to senior level, and it does just show you, as well, benefits sometimes of losing in that preliminary round, which is maybe again why this format of the championship maybe has to have another look at, because I think Cara are one side when you look at how their championship played out compared to how Raheen's championship played out, and you go back to that preliminary round game, like definitely Cara got a benefit out of losing that match, and you shouldn't benefit really from losing the game. But that's a bit of a tangent anyway. Look, but yeah, the quarterfinal, Cara really, was 3 points each at half time after Cara played into the wind, and even when they were down, had a 10-minute spell down to 14 men when one of their key players as well, not just any player, Dan Lynham, was shown a black card. They went ahead then early in the second half, and yeah, it was kind of definitely a time under pressure. I was thinking back to the last time there was such a seismic shock at this stage of the championship. I think it would have been around 2009 when Suncroft beat Sarsfields. It was kind of that length of time since we've seen such an upset. But in fairness, Athy did wrestle control. They rewarded a penalty. Was our best referee in the county, the best referee in the country, was down at pitch level far closer. So he obviously spotted something. I can't say I saw anything from the stands that kind of was worthy of a penalty, but absolutely the referee was in a better position. So, I've said Brendan Cawley is an outstanding referee. So you have to go with his call. It certainly helped Athy get back in their route, kind of their groove again, and they got 3 goals in the last 25 minutes of that. So, but even still, it was very much up for grabs going into injury time. Only 3 points between the sides, and it was only when Conor Doyle got that third Athy goal that the game was put to bed. So yeah, full credit to Cara, but Athy kind of continues their up and down championship season. They've been outstanding in some games. They looked kind of well off it in others, and they're going to have to find that bit of consistent form for a full 60-minute performance now as we move into the business end of things.
Yeah, and Tommy, that's a very potent 6 forwards that Athy have. But in fairness, Cara kept them quiet enough, and it didn't really open up until Ben Purcell came on, really.
Yeah, and even when it did open up, I mean, you can see the score 3-7, and obviously those 3 goals were huge for him. We have the penalty, and even one of the goals as well was a bit of a, the ball is bouncing around its palm to the net. But that Cara defense, like, God, they absolutely, they really did lock it down. And obviously teams will have the value of looking back at these games on Clubber now as well, and they'll see how they marshal the likes of Colin Moore and Niall Kelly and these lads. But Athy, like the Athy supporters near me in the terrace were so frustrated. And they started getting frustrated with the referee, and then they were getting frustrated with their own players, and you could just see it because there's so much expectation on this Athy team from their own supporters and obviously from the media as well. So when they're not firing, so at times they're moving the ball out the back, and Colin McCarron is so good at obviously winning good dirty ball at the back and moving it quickly forward, and you're thinking, here they are now, they're flying up the middle, and there's players moving everywhere, and then down to good defense obviously from Cara, but it just stopped a little bit, and they weren't getting the shots off. Now the conditions obviously weren't ideal at the weekend. The conditions played a huge part in every game this weekend at all levels. You could see that the way Cara were shooting from everywhere in that second half as well. But fair play to Cara. But listen, the most important thing is that Athy are into that semi-final to have another chance.
Yeah, and lastly, Jared, do you think the absence of James Roycroft and Padraig Spillane upset Athy a little bit? Because Roycroft is quite good at pinpointing his kickouts, and Spillane is a good full-back and likes to get forward as well.
Yeah, and Padraig Spillane was obviously part of the Kildare setup this year and was training away with the inter-county team, albeit never made an appearance. Even in the matchday squad, he still had the benefit of that inter-county top-level training. It's far from ideal as well to lose a goalkeeper, especially one of his experiences as James Roycroft, and has been in between the posts for as long as he has been there in that Athy team. So that is definitely far from ideal. The knock-on effect, obviously, Shane Jackman came in, he didn't do anything wrong. Obviously didn't concede a goal, and his kickouts were pretty good, and also, it's not pointing the finger at him in any way, but just that I don't think any manager at this stage of the championship would like to have a doubt over his goalkeeper or who's going to be in between the posts for the semi-final. So I'm sure we'll be doing everything to get James Roycroft back and Padraig Spillane too, because he's really come on, he's still only 21, maybe 22. He's still very young, but he's come on leaps and bounds over the last couple of years and has turned into a very, very solid fullback. So again, he's another one that Athy will need.
Yes, indeed. Next up was Naas and Clane, and the demise of Naas was greatly exaggerated, Tommy. A good team performance in defeating Clane on Saturday evening.
Yeah, they got the job done. In fairness, Clane they tried their best. They were probably relying a lot on the likes of McLaughlin to be taking on 2-pointers or to be running the show, and in fairness to Shane O'Sullivan as well. They just didn't have enough for Naas in the end, and that was it. Like, it wasn't like they failed in certain areas of the field or they didn't use possession well enough. They just didn't have enough, and Naas were just better all over the field. I don't know if there was ever a talk of a demise of Naas. I mean, a lot of people were so wary of the fact that was pretty much a dead rubber. Now, what that does give us is it gives us the way it set Naas losing that match to Sarsfields, it does give us Naas versus Celbridge in the semi-final as opposed to the final. But as I spoke to, I'm not going to name anybody, obviously, as never would in this pod, but I spoke to one man under the stand, and he'll know who he is when he hears this, because I know he listens to it. But he just said he just thinks that Naas, this is before the game, he just thinks that Naas might be letting the handbrake just dropped down a little bit. Maybe they pulled up the handbrake a little bit for that Sarsfields game. But he said today, he kind of looked. He said, let's just see how they go. But he wouldn't be surprised if he saw Naas putting in a big performance and letting loose a little bit, which is exactly what they did. Like you can see they were pretty ruthless at times, breaking from the back. The big thing about Naas, the class forwards that Naas have, I've said this before, what I'm going to say now, but they obviously have great forwards, and Dara Kerwin is unmarkable. You just can't. I mean, anybody that, no matter what you do, if Dara's on form, you just don't stop him. He's irreplaceable. If Naas didn't have him, it might be a little bit of a different story because he is that good. But Naas in the tackle and when they break, like when they hit you, they don't just hit you for the sake of hurting you and hitting your shoulder. They hit you to release the ball, and when that ball pops, they get it and they're gone. And we saw the value of Elliot Byrne at the weekend. That ball drops in the 50-50 break. He's gone like a rocket, and they're gone up the field. And Brian Byrne is back managing everything. Make sure there's no too many lads going forward or anything like this. Everything is marshaled while the madness goes on up front. Just really impressive from Naas. I'm not going to say it was disappointing from Clane because they just didn't have enough.
Yeah, and Ger, we talked there about the great forward line. Dara Kerwin, Alex Byrne, Ryan Sinky, they get all the kudos. But the lads who are coming on this year, from my point of view, Kevin Cummins and Elliot Byrne, who was mentioned there by Tommy. Cummins took his goal very, very well. Not so long ago, we were talking about him playing for CBS. The two wing backs or two wing forwards are coming on very well in 2025.
Yeah, and Kevin Cummins is still very young. I'd say he's barely out of his teens. He was on the Kildare under 20 panel last year. He's playing senior football at a very, very high level for one of the best teams in Kildare and Leinster. So he's holding his own on that team. And as you say, Pat, he really did take that goal well. It was a lovely move. And Elliot Byrne is another one. He kind of goes under the radar, but we have spoken about him in the past, and he gets through an awful lot of work around there. But there was just a different feel about Naas going forward. Even in the first 5 minutes, you could just sense it compared to that performance against Sarsfields. They were kind of a little bit lackluster and lethargic against Sarsfields, but there was a real intensity to them right from the opening 5 minutes. And I think on the first 6 shots, 5 of them were points. Ryan Sinky had 3 points inside the opening quarter. And there was just a totally different feel about them. It was kind of like, this is the business end of the championship, and we're really good at mean business now at this stage. So, yeah, I think it was Naas putting down a marker, and I think it said, anybody who was thinking that Naas's demise was imminent on the back of that defeat against Sarsfields, that was kind of just Naas saying we are not going anywhere, as if they were kind of anybody really thought they were. That was, albeit against the kind of Clane side who are probably, I think the 4 beaten sides in the quarterfinals. That's kind of the level, kind of 4 quarterfinalists. But even against the side who you'd expect them to be better than Naas, they just looked, as if they really do mean business now moving into the proper games coming up.
And a final look at Clane then. Obviously, this is a very young Clane team, apart from Tig Montgomery, who's, I think, 27, and Brian McLaughlin, who's 26. All the others are under 25, and some of them just are 20, 21. So it's a very young Clane team from a championship point of view.
Yeah, look, and they had moments in that game. It was really the goal was a real sickener for them because it was right in the stroke of half time. I think was it only 2 points in or 3 points in when that goal was scored, and I know Brian McLaughlin kicked the 2-pointer then. It was 4 in it again. They got back. Shane O'Sullivan had a couple of scores early in the second half before Naas took off in that incredible spell when they scored 8 points in a row with Alex Byrne kicking 6 of them. So there was kind of 2 or 3 key moments in the game that just went against Clane. They were very unlucky not to get a goal. Shane O'Sullivan had scored 3 points, including a 2-pointer. And it was a bit of a wayward kick out from Luke Mullins that Clane had pounced upon, and it was Owen Doyle actually coming back across that blocked Shane O'Sullivan's shot, and it still ended up hitting the foot of the post as well. And a goal at that stage for Clane with about 10 minutes to go to the half time would have put a different complexion on it. So Clane can take a lot from their season. As you say, they're a young side at the moment. I think that's what they are, a quarter-final team. I don't see them anywhere kind of at the level of the top 4 sides that are the semi-finalists, but they're going in the right direction, and if they can keep that kind of core group together, then there's no reason why they can't improve in the coming years. So obviously, Paul Kelly was in his first year in charge as well, so a first year under new management is always a bit of a learning process for players and the manager involved, so no doubt if they can stick together, they can be better again next year.
Okay, first match on the Sunday then in Cedars and Convers Park in the Joe Mallon Motors. Tommy was Selbridge and Moorfield. Moorfield looked out of it at 112 to 4 points at half time, but they did fight back a fair bit in the second half.
They did, and it was again that's what everybody was talking about at halftime. You know, what can Moorfield put up with the wind? Selbridge's running game is so good that they're not the type of team that's, you know, popping off shots from 50 yards anyway. So, you know, they probably would have been confident enough against the win in the second half. But the quality that Moorfield have, I would say Aaron Masterson was told at halftime, if you get a half a yard, shoot. You know, because he's that good from distance, and you could see that in the opening few. I think he kicked a 2-pointer in the first 30 seconds, did he?
Yeah. From the 65 again.
Yeah, like it was crazy, but like he's so good, and he's so good at that long distance shot. And what makes it even more impressive is he comes across the ball when he kicks it. You know, like he's not hooking it. He's not just, you know, booting it as hard as he can. He has the quality to come across the shoelaces, the bootlaces, and angle the ball. As long as the wind obviously isn't swirling, it'll work. But they did. I mean, again, you'd expect Moorfield to fly back, but Selbridge just did enough. You know, they got the goals at the right time. Dino O'Donoghue, he looked surprised when the hat trick went in. He did the whole three. He did it. I don't know whether he was looking for a camera or whatever. Maybe I think it was over towards his bench, but he put the 3 fingers up and he scored his hat trick from wing back. But he has been really good this year. I mean, he was the focal point of a huge debate in the team of the week group a few weeks ago. You know, because some people were demanding he be going in. Some people thought maybe like somebody else got in, but his value from that wing back position, you know, and he also has a year of being in the Kildare setup. You know, getting that inter-county training, that inter-county conditioning, getting used to the different tactics and stuff. And you can see like his confidence this year that he's bringing to the game. He's going forward, and you pretty much you need to track him everywhere he's going, because he's like what Kevin Flynn has changed his game a bit in the last couple of years, where he's a lot like a playmaker now, but he still has the burst forward. But that's kind of what Flynn used to do years ago, that breaking from the back. And then you had Aaron Brown, who did the business again, as he tends to do when they need him most, getting the points. But again, like I was impressed by Selbridge all over. Kevin O'Callaghan as well in the half forward line. You know, it looks like he's back to form.
Yeah, Jerry, I'm just going to come in on that, Jerry, maybe with you, because that's probably one of the most experienced teams in the championship, this Selbridge team. They have Shane McNamara in goals. Mick O'Grady, no matter where he plays, he wears 3 most of the time. Mick Constantine is there. Fergal Conway, Kevin Flynn, mentioned by Tommy there, Kevin O'Callaghan. Huge experience in this Selbridge team.
Yeah, Hugh McGrillen missed as well there on Sunday. He's still a big part of things, even in his late 30s. Yeah. Like, it's hard to pick out a weak point in that Selbridge side when you start running through that team. Like, they're so strong all over the field. And what I thought was key was, Selbridge scored 112 in that first half. Moorfield scored 112 with the wind in the second half as well. But Selbridge were obviously able to get the scores against the wind as well. And they were so clever. And like Tommy's talking about Dino O'Donoghue there, Niall O'Regan is another option coming from deep as well. Kevin Flynn, I thought that was a real return to form from him. He's struggled all year since picking up a hamstring injury around this time last year. Going in, I think it was a few games before he came back. I think he played a half in the final. So it was maybe in the group games that he did a really bad hamstring injury. And I don't think he ever fully got over that through the inter-county season this year. But he looked, really at it again. I spoke to him after the game, and he said he was just enjoying his football again and enjoying getting a run of games under his belt and kind of playing week after week. And I think that's helping him an awful lot. And yeah, I thought Selbridge were very impressive, to be honest. Naas laid down their marker on Saturday evening, and this was Selbridge coming right behind them saying, we are right up for this game. It's a huge semi-final. We'll talk about those semi-finals probably more in depth next week, but Selbridge were within a kick of a ball on both occasions in the county finals in the last 2 years, and they're going to be right there again. And this was a real kind of, again, like Naas on Saturday evening saying we're down to the business end of things, and we mean business.
Yeah, and the final game then on Sunday in the Joe Mann Motors in Cedar St. Conleth's Park. We talked about the Big Four. Well, the Big Four almost didn't happen, Tommy, because at halftime it didn't look as if Sarsfield would be getting through. 2-15 to 1-7 at halftime, and you have to say that Johnstownbridge were full value for that 2-15. Some great goals, and Dan was doing Dan's work.
Yeah, exactly. And again, when we talk about the wind and we talk about the value of the wind, at halftime you're thinking to yourself, just like, yeah, the wind is worth, just say we spoke about there 112, 114, but that was a big gap and you still have to put the ball over the bar no matter what the wind is like. Now we know Sarsfield's obviously had the players to do it, but I was sitting there thinking, I was waiting for the second half to come on, and I'm just thinking, do Sarsfields have enough in them to come back and also to stop Johnstown Bridge the other end, which is one of the main things they did. Now obviously we know Sam Dorn went off, so that was huge. But again, Johnstown Bridge kicked on so well in that first half, the scores they were taking on, and we spoke before about how good they were at taking 2 points at 2-pointers, and we spoke about that a couple of weeks ago. And you can see in the scores charts as well, you know, a couple of their players up near the top of the scores from play, and that's their lads like taking their 2-pointers. But Jesus, Sarsfields in that second half, I mean, they had a job to do, and it was almost like they didn't care when Moorfield got the ball and they were going to attack. There's like, even if they score a point, we're going to go down the other end and we're going to score either a 2-pointer or we're going to turn over something. They just went, like Barry Coffey's free taking was excellent as well, in fairness to him, when he came on. I thought Ben McCormick was really good at driving the line as well. Obviously there is a lot of attention on him when it comes to form and stuff, but I did think he was excellent. Tig as well in the middle, you know. But the way they came back and to end up winning by 4 points, it was brilliant, in fairness. And they proved again why they're second favourites.
Jared, do we give credit to Vinnie Walsh because whatever he said or put in the tea at half time, and then the substitutes in the second half were really telling, and we mentioned some of them there. Tommy mentioned them, the Barry Coffey in particular.
Yeah, I thought Barry Coffey was huge coming on at half time. He just brought a bit of composure to the Sarsfields game. Again, I spoke to Shay Ryan after the match, and he kind of said they were panicking a little bit in the first half. They were taking shots on, and when Johnstown Bridge were scoring for absolutely fun, you know, even with a win, I don't think I've seen a team have a half like that to score 7 2-pointers along with a couple of goals as well. It was incredible. Josh O'Donoghue was another one who was just incredible with his shooting. But Sarsfields, you know, they're under pressure a bit. That even in the early stages, they coughed up 3 up indiscretions or 3 back indiscretions as well as was on one occasion, and that, you know, handed Johnstown Bridge 4 points. Was criminal to be doing that, you know, in the first half against such a win. They really were, when Johnstown Bridge were kicking so well, so it handed them 4 points. But yeah, the second half, you know, Vinnie Walsh got them in. They calmed it down at the halftime break. They came out in the second half. They just started chipping away, and even by the time they got back to the 12-point lead, had gone back to 5 or 6. You just felt inevitable at that stage. There was nothing that Johnstown Bridge could do to stop the onslaught by then. But I thought around the middle of the field they were superb. Tig Hoey and Shay Ryan, they just dominated it in there in the second half. Johnstown Bridge couldn't win anything off their own kick out. They really did struggle to get out beyond their own halfway line. Shay and Tig Hoey. Jesus, Tig Hoey. I was on KFM. I said he was like Tyson Fury there punching at one stage. He met a ball at one stage to punch it, and, you know, went back about 40 meters. I wouldn't like to be on the end of a right hook from him anyway, but you know, he's an absolute giant in midfield, and you know, I just thought Sarsfields were excellent in the second half, and as I said, it kind of felt inevitable once they got it back to 5 or 6 points that there was only going to be one winner at that stage.
Yeah, and Tommy, then finally on the senior championship, although it was defeat for Johnstown Bridge on Sunday, can they be happy enough with their season so far?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they absolutely can. They'll look back at every game, and they look back at the scores that they put up in certain games, and I mean, they can look at themselves as being, I mean, would we have them 5th at the moment, for like they were threatening to get into 4th there for a while when teams were wobbling a little bit in the group stages. But oh yeah, absolutely, those experienced players that they have. I mean, Pat, you spoke during the week as well about Keith Cribben, and like how well he played. I mean, between the two Cribbens, and obviously Dan Flynn as well, and just you know, cool heads, you know, different approaches to the game, because they do have so many exciting young players. That Johnstown really can build on this hugely going into next year. So absolutely, yeah, I'd give them a B for this year.
There you go.
It was frustrating for them, though. They've been in 10 quarterfinals in the last 12 years and only won 2 of them. They've lost 8 of those quarterfinals. So, yeah, just getting past kind of one of those big top 4 teams, you know, even when it was Moorfield, when they were considered one of the top 4 a few years ago. Yeah, it's just that bridge is just difficult for them. But yeah, like as Tommy said, they've had a great year and probably got as much out of their season as could be expected.
All of that has given us 2 semi-finals on Sunday week in Seagulls and Conless Park. Selbridge versus Naas at 2 p.m. and Sarsfields versus Athy at 4:15. We look forward to those games next weekend or next week on the podcast. Podcast number 8 it will be at that stage. The relegation final, Allenwood 116, Confey 13 points. Terrible situation there where Allenwood bring on a very, very big star and win the game for them. He's an up-and-coming star, I think, although I suggested to him on Clubber on Saturday night that maybe he might end up in goals like Mikey Behan did.
I don't think he's going back anywhere soon at the moment. He's still plenty of life in him. Jesus, like it's ridiculous. Like, I mean, he gave the most unconvincing retirement speech ever last year. Even when he was saying it, I don't think he believed it himself that if Alan would need him, that he wouldn't get the boots on again. But then obviously when he picked out that nasty injury in the first game against Clogherinco, after not playing all season, you did kind of think that even Johnny might be finished and he mightn't play again this season. But I think he missed one game. He was back on again and. Yeah, come at the hour, come at the man. What a 2-pointer followed by a goal. And if Alan Wood could handpick any man to be in those positions at such a crucial time, it was always going to be Johnny. So yeah, fantastic. Obviously, the thing about those relegation finals, it has to be a loser. So I know bitter disappointment for Confey, who've had a long spell at senior level and going back, of course, to Davy Burke's time, was it 2015 or 16, had a run to a semi-final as well. So yeah, disappointment for them obviously, but yeah, fantastic for Johnny to finally get a win for Alan Wood as well after 15 defeats in a row this year that they won to stay up.
Yeah, so we look forward to those Joe Mann Motors Senior Football Championship semi-finals on Sunday week. Team of the week then, Ger, for the seniors, first of all.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks again to Darren, as always, and the team there in loading and lifting for their sponsorship of our teams of the week. Yeah, so Shane McNamara of Selbridge, who made maybe one of the saves of the championship so far with a brilliant fingertip save to deny Danny Hannafy, and also another good one in the second half from Adam Tyrrell. So the Selbridge keeper is in between the posts. Cathal McKennedy, hard-running cornerback for Cara. Tom Aspel of Sarsfields and Michael Spillane of Athy complete the full-back line. The hat-trick hero for Selbridge, Dean O'Donoghue, alongside Kevin Flynn, and also Paddy McDermott then of Naas. It's an all Newbridge midfield partnership then with Aaron Masterson of Moorfield and Ty Coey of Sarsfields. And moving further forward then we've Elliot Byrne of Naas, Kevin O'Callaghan of Selbridge, and Brian McLaughlin of Clane, with a full forward line completed then of the two Johnstown Bridge men, Josh O'Donoghue and Daniel Flynn, along with Carl Hartley of Sarsfields.
Yeah, well, we have a leader across the water who claims to have solved 7 wars. Well, he might have been needed to solve an 8th war during the past few days while we were trying to put that team together. But congratulations to everybody involved. And we're still talking. Anyway, okay. Just about,
Pat.
Just about. Yeah. And God be with the fellas who we put on that team. I hope they appreciate what we've done. Anyway, let's move on then to the quarterfinals of the Intermediate Football Championship, and the results there were as follows. The first one out was Leixlip 3-9, Milltown 3-10. Milltown winning that one by a point. After extra time, then it was Larry's and Castledermot. Larry's coming through there 120 to 214 after extra time. And then on the Sunday, we had Salons 219, Suncroft 9 points. And the final game then, Rathangan 110, Two Mile House 20 points. Ger, quick look at the Leixlip Milltown game. I was there at that one. It certainly didn't look at half time that it would end up that way. Leixlip 3-4, Milltown 1-3, and a big turnaround for Milltown in that particular game.
And it's starting to become more prevalent, I suppose. Well, one with the weather conditions, as I suppose we move on towards winter. Obviously, windier conditions kind of lead to those kind of cliched games of two halves. Also, the 2-pointers obviously help, and I suppose even the fact that the belief is there. With these teams, even if a team is 10 points down at half time, they know if they can get a couple of 2-pointers early in the second half or not a goal, they're right back in it. So I think I don't think any team accepts defeat anymore. If you were 10 points down at half time in previous years, you were probably thinking about going out the gate and getting back home. But it's a different story now. Milltown left it late, and again, we'll talk about St. Lawrence's and Castledermot as well. I suppose an increase in pressure as well in the last dying moments of these games when there's so much at stake. And Leixlip, who conceded a 3-up indiscretion that gave Milltown a tap-over score, is such a harsh way to win a championship game, and for Leixlip to lose it, it really is tough. And Castledermot suffered in normal time against St. Lawrence's as well before eventually losing after extra time. But it does just show the importance of kind of obeying those rules, and whether it's someone on the sideline who has specific responsibility for ensuring that the right number of players are left up the field, or if it's among the players themselves. But just when it gets down to those chaotic final couple of minutes when a game's in a melting pot, a huge knockout tie like that, it must be so difficult for players, even communicating. There's a bit of an atmosphere in the ground, and you're trying to shout at a lad on the far side of the pitch. It's very hard to kind of make yourself known and heard. So it's something very difficult for the teams and the players, and probably only going to get more so now with the increase in pressure and increased intensity moving into the final round of games in the semi-finals.
Yeah, and Conor Lawler has been a bit of a find for league slip this year. Missed last year. He was over playing in Boston, as far as I know, Tommy.
Was he? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought he was playing last year. Yeah, I mean, between him and Jack Barrett and obviously Tommy Mulick driving things, league slip will be very very disappointed. I know some league slip people that I would know in certain different WhatsApp groups and talking to people, they were very disappointed. But it was almost like they were at the end of it. It was like, that's our luck for the last couple of years. Losing by a point like that. Losing a tight county final last year in brutal conditions, and they just need that leap because they have such quality, and they really do, like all over the field. And they're the type of a team that if they do get up to senior, it'll really help push them on. I don't know. They must be sick, but lads, Milltown, you have to hand it to Milltown this year again.
Yeah.
Like probably one of the teams of the championship last year, and definitely one of the teams of the championship this year after coming up from junior 2 years ago.
Yeah, and Jared, the fellas who did the championship for the junior championship a few years ago, Cian Buckley, Colin O'Shea, Alan Dignam, they're really, and indeed Ronan O'Shea, they're really still on song. But you have new fellas coming in like the likes of Conor Sheeran, Ben Curran, Paddy Donoghue. They're all doing the business, and Jamie Cross, the man they call Dinny, he's still very, very tight at the back as well. So going to be a very hard team to beat.
Obviously, the experience of playing at that stage last year was maybe a step too far on their first year back in the intermediate grade last year, but they certainly will register chances this year, even though they're up against the championship favourites. But yeah, like the work that Milltown have put in, this is kind of the fruition of probably the best part of a decade's work, really, because I think a lot of those players you mentioned there, Pat, were part of a minor side that made it into Division 1. I think they played in was it an A quarter-final or semi-final as well. Like they did really well in a very high grade of minor football championship, and have wasted absolutely no time in making their impact felt on the senior team for them. So yeah, Milltown are one of the most progressive clubs around. They will play Division 1 league football next year. They could be playing senior football championship as well. They're an outstanding club, and I suppose in amongst those young players that are mentioned, the likes of Ronan O'Shea and Colin O'Shea, Alan Dignam as well. Like they're a great club, man. Colin O'Shea has been one of the best players outside the senior championship, I'd say, for the best part of the decade. Even when Milltown were, bobbing up and down from the lower ranks of the intermediate into the junior, winning a junior, like Colin O'Shea has been a wonderful kind of club man, and he's the kind of player that's a person and leader in the team that every team dreams about having, and he's been a fantastic servant for them. And obviously that O'Shea family, Ronan got a goal there at the weekend. Darren was the manager last year or the year before, wasn't he, as well? So like the whole family has put a huge effort into the Milltown club, and kind of that just sums them up. They're obviously from a small enough area there, and a very close-knit club, and they really are going places. And again, that's semi-final is another one. There's a lot of to cancel any plans for, or if you have next week, because there's some absolutely mouth-watering semi-finals between the senior and intermediate. And yeah, that's Salons and Milltown is another one.
Yeah, and the
Pat,
games.
Sorry, Pat, I will just say before I move off Milltown that I really do hope that when Darren O'Shea is at these matches, at these Milltown matches, that he has a serious sense of satisfaction, because he was a huge part of that Milltown. And all those young players that came up, Darren was their mentor. When he stepped aside, and obviously Johnny Donnelly has come in, it's been seamless between the two managers. But I just hope that Darren, like I know he's obviously, everybody in Milltown knows what he's done, but I just hope he is getting satisfaction out of this, and he's not getting a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out or anything, because he has such a huge part in where Milltown are at the moment.
And a bit of a shout out to, of course, to Alan Dignam, of course, who had some of the players at Patrician College, and ironically, Tommy Mulick, who was there as well in Patrician College, he would have had some of those Milltown players. I was about to say, anyway, in the other quarterfinals in the National Electrical Wholesalers on the Sunday, one probably went to form, Tommy, one maybe didn't go to form. Salons, they're through to the semi-final, beat Suncroft, but did we see Two Mile House beating Rathangan?
No, to be honest,
Moving on quickly.
I suppose in the which one do you want me to focus on?
You're the boss.
With the Sun, yeah, in the Suncroft, the Suncroft Salins game, again, you have to hand the Suncroft, like in that first half, they made sure Salins knew they were in a game. They really did. I mean, all over the field, they were turning over ball, trying to get it as quickly as can, like Owen Lawless, running the show, kind of breaking from the half forward line, and obviously Big Fionn, doing the business, putting the ball over the bar. But the likes of Jack Setright and these lads, Mikey Troy at the back, their defence was brilliant. I was just watching them and I was thinking, I remember seeing Suncroft against Castledermot in the preliminary round, and I was impressed. Now Richard had said a couple of weeks ago, maybe Suncroft are just that good, and he's right, because they should absolutely hold their heads up, because I'm pretty sure they're playing Division 4 football next year. So they got relegated from Division 3 this year, I think. So people that get relegated in the league campaign are automatically looked at. They could be under pressure when it comes to championship. That's normally the way it works. But you have to hand it to Suncroft for that. Like, they've just squeezed every ounce of what they have in the championship this year. But in the end, Salins just had too much for them. Bringing Keane Grimes back in after his suspension, and bringing him off the bench, and he scores 1-3. I mean, that's the quality that they've missed Keane, say, for a game, but it didn't look like they missed him, and his quality is added back into it. Suncroft, again, to their credit, kept James Dalton pretty quiet. I think he only scored a point, but Colm Dalton is really fine in form as well. So it's it is looking great. But no, I did not see Two Mile House beating Rathangan, but for Didier Cordonnier putting up, like, I mean, if you look at the 2 point thing now, and you see it in the inter-county level when the new rules started, the arc almost seems like a target area. So people are like, okay, if I can get to that 2 point arc, that's where I'll take my 2 point shot on. That's my distance. Like Aaron Masterson, again, I showed a couple of times this year. Don't fucking wait to get up to the 40-meter mark. If you have a 55 meter boot on you, and you have a wind which turns it into a 60-meter boot, take a shot on. Yeah. But when you have Didier Cordonnier, who we know and we have known for years, the boot that he has on him, but for him to be able to judge the wind on some of those 2 points was like, if anybody get a chance to look back, and especially one in the first half where he kicked across the goals because he knew the wind would bring it back in, and he was the difference on the day. 13 points, unbelievable, unreal.
Yeah, are some defenses defending well inside the 40-meter arc rather than, I suppose, just on it or outside it?
They're defending that. They are defending they seem to be defending the arc. And
even inside the arc rather than outside it,
But it does depend on the opposition. You have to give credit to teams as well, and the work that goes into organising defences, because some teams can defend the arc because they know that maybe the runners aren't inside, because that's the big danger, the pop over to defence, the runner, and that's why the new rules are there, because the extra space is there for these guys running in behind to try get what everybody wants, goals. But if a team isn't doing that, and a team is farting around on the arc with the ball, and they know they're not going to send it in, then they can push up. So it does depend on opposition as well. That's why, like, 2 Mile House defence against Rathangan was brilliant, and it was against Round Towers as well. They completely nullified Round Towers in that preliminary quarterfinal. All their big threats were gone. Their 2 Mile House are big, physical squad, and they seem to be getting better with every game. And we've said this, and the Nationalist said this as well, I think even in a headline, that 2 Mile House continue to improve, and that was 2 games ago. And they really are. And that Larry's forward line better be in for a tough time, because 2 Mile House will give nothing easy way in that semi-final.
Tanga will be disappointed, Ger.
Yeah, and I suppose, again, it's really the quarterfinals where the championships get started. You can do what you want in the group stages. Kind of maybe get you a more favourable draw for the knockout stages, but ultimately it's what you do in these knockout ties that defines your season, especially for a side like Rathangan, who would have had high hopes of certainly getting to a semi-final or competing in a final. So yeah, ultimately disappointing for them. To lose is one thing, but to lose kind of with 7 points there, is definitely an eye raiser there. And Declan Crine and others there involved with Rathangan have put in an awful lot of work. They are a fine side, and it's that kind of a game that maybe if they were to play them again next week, they'd probably reverse that. But that's not the way things go in knockout football. You have to perform on the day. Ultimately, 2 Mile House and especially Didier Cordonnier did that, and they moved forward. Yeah, but Rathangan licked the wound for the winter.
Yeah, Tommy, I forgot about the second game on the Friday night. I think you had to go home and thaw out after that particular game. A win for the Larrys. It didn't look like that for certain times in that game.
Yeah, it was in God, it was such a back and forth game. I mean, Castlearmor were 5 down at one stage, Larry's were 5 down at another stage. I think the big thing, obviously, the big talking point again was the very end, the last 20 seconds, and Ger was there. He knows the story as well. Castlearmor getting caught for the 3-up indiscretion, and they were so they were 2 points up. Basically, lad, they were defending their lead. Clock counting down. I think it had gone into the 7th minute maybe, of injury time, and yeah, Castlearmor got caught for that. Got badly caught for it as well. It wasn't like it was a 2-step over the halfway line job. You could see, Gerard said in his report as well. You could see how angry Gavin Keating was that it happened. It was just a lapse in concentration because they're putting so much effort into trying to keep out that equalising two-pointer, because we had seen in the match already that Larry's had it in their arsenal to get these shots off, and of course as soon as the 50-metre was brought up, TJ Nolan was always going to take it on, brought it back out the arc, struck it wonderfly, brought it to extra time, and the Larrys just had that little too much in extra time. Their subs that they brought on, young O'Dwyer and these lads, they did a really good job. In injury time, Castlearmor looked a little bit out on their feet. They put in a huge effort, like scored 2 brilliant goals either side of the half. Paddy Whelan with the first goal, breaking through the middle, and then Emmett O'Keefe, who's had a brilliant year after coming back into the fold, coming up from centre half back and banging a goal in. It really looked like Castlearmor were going to do a Castledermot on it again. Like, they really looked like they showed up. They will be devastated. They'll be disappointed. But you have to, like, in fairness to Larry's, they got the scores.
Yeah, Jared, just finally then on all of this, the 3-up infraction was pulled up quite a few times in the quarterfinals. Is that down to pressure or greater vigilance by the match officials who had fourth officials for those games?
Yeah, it's probably a bit of both, really. Yeah, like obviously the extra pair of eyes on the sideline and the respective management teams, especially in St. Conleth's there, where they really decided the fourth official. They're never shy for an appeal about these 3-up indiscretions. And as Tommy said, the rules were altered a little bit. So I think there is a tiny bit of leeway in terms of you're maybe allowed a step or two over, and especially if you're playing the ball. But yeah, the respective sidelines are very quick to get on. But yeah, particularly that Castledermot one, you felt really sorry for Castledermot because they turned that game around spectacular in the second half. And it wasn't just the 3-up rule as well, because that game could have swung. If Castledermot had won in normal time, we'd be talking about a moment in the second half, because Lawrence's had dominated the start of the second half. They scored a goal, I think, after 15 seconds, and they moved into a 6-point lead and were absolutely cruising with about 20 minutes to go. And then Mark Glynn was penalised in the centre of the field for stripping the ball away from Donncha Kinch, I think it was. He handed the ball back to the referee rather than his opponent. The ball was brought in then. Gavin Keating elected to kick a 2-pointer, and all of a sudden Castledermot got a bit of momentum then. Emmett O'Keefe's goal followed shortly after. And, that game could have swung only for that late equalising point for TJ Nolan on that moment as well. And thinking back to the Athy and Cara game as well, I think James McGrath was penalised for rolling the ball in the general direction of where I think it happened. I think the ball bounced after a foul or a clash in the centre of the field. It rolled towards him, and he just rolled the ball back. I suppose in that situation, a player is probably just better off just not touching the ball at all, because James, to be fair, in that one wasn't trying to waste time at all. He was just rolling the ball back to wherever the free was going to be taken for, but he was still penalised, and it ended up in a 2-pointer for Dara Swords as well. So there's lots of little new rules that they've been in all season, obviously, but now when the real pressure is on, it's a lot harder to have clear thought and clear minds in those key crunch moments. But that's what the best teams are going to do in these final round of games.
Yeah, and that gives us then in the National Electrical Wholesalers semi-finals, it would be 2 Miles House versus St. Lawrence's and Sallins versus Milltown, and those 2 games are on Friday and Saturday of next week. Mangard Park, Sallins versus Milltown at 8 o'clock, and on Saturday then at 2 o'clock, 2 Mile House versus St. Lawrence's. In the relegation final, probably went to form with it. Monasterevin 120, St. Kevin's 112. Disappointing year for Kevin's, even though they were close on many occasions, Tommy.
Yeah, disappointing year for them. Ultimately that defeat to Kilcullen on a Friday night there a few weeks ago, I think that was the big one for them, because when you look at that losers group, I would have had probably Kevin's as slight favourites in that game, and it just shows you those little margins. So when you lose a game like that, a real tight game, you know, it spirals a little bit then. Whereas Monasterevin, it was hard to call at the start. A lot of people kind of thought that Kevin's would have got over the line. But obviously we'd heard that had a couple of injuries, which turned out these lads were playing. But I got a good few messages off Monasterevin lads on Saturday night saying this was no surprise to them. There was no surprise to them that they knew they had the players, and they were always confident that they were going to do it. I mean, confidence is a great thing. We should be confident in every game, but they still got relegated into Division 4 this year, and they were struggling to find any kind of form in the championship. But when it mattered, again, like Alan Wood, when it mattered, they scored 120. Against a tough enough St. Kevin's defence. We know some of the players they have, and we spoke about them last week, the dual players, and how tight and tough these lads are. So that'll give Monasterevin a serious boost going into next year. Because they would have felt very down if they'd gone down into junior as well. St. Kevin's just have to look to rebuild.
So an interesting semi-finals in store in the National Electrical Wholesalers Intermediate Championship next week. Jared, the loading and lifting intermediate team of the week, then the Nationalist team of the week.
The scoring goalkeeper Didier Cardonier, 13 points, incredible tally.
Surprise.
He was centre half forward on the team of the week last week.
There you go.
That's definitely a first, I think, anyway, isn't it? Yeah. So moving on to the fullback line then, Brian Nolan of Castledermot, Peter Kelly of Two Mile House, and Liam Kelly of Milltown. Jack Travers of League Slip, Colin O'Shea of Milltown, and Luke Kelly of Salons are in the half-backs. Then in the midfield, TJ Nolan with that, I think 11 points was what he got against Castledermot, including that late equalising 2-pointer and a couple of scores that won the game in extra time as well. Conor Sheeran of midfield is his midfield partner. Felix Lawler of St. Lawrence's, Tommy Mullock of League Slip, and Colin Dalton of Salons are in the half-forward line, with Chris Healy then of Two Mile House, Fionn Dowling of Suncroft, and Gavin Keating of Castledermot completing the lineup.
Yes, indeed. And let's move on then to the Towncross Transport Kildare Junior Football Championships. A final then between Grange and Rathcoffey. How did you see the semi-finals going last week, Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, at Garvan really put it up to Grange at times. They had a great support behind them as well. Anytime that at Garvan looked like they were getting back into the game, a few roars went up. You could see their big physical forwards as well. Really, like Grange needed that as well. Grange needed that big tough big tough semi-final, because they cruised along a little bit outside of the Ballymore game. And I'd say Grange getting through that will be obviously delighted to reach the first final in a good few years. But the manner and the way they won it as well, because they know they're going to have a tough final against Rathcoffey. And Rathcoffey and Kappa, I think, went the way people expected in the way that it was so tight, because that was always going to be a real tight game because they're so evenly matched. Ultimately, Rathcoffey just getting over the line in the end sets up that final is going to be fantastic. It really is, because are there questions now of Grange? If you look back at that Grange at Garvan game, which I'm sure Rathcoffey will do, can they see any little chinks in their armour? Can they see any weaknesses? The Garvan defence, I'm trying to remember who picked up Fionn Bergen, but he kept them scoreless anyway. It could have been Callum Sork, maybe it wasn't, but he kept them scoreless anyway. If you keep Fionn Bergen scoreless in 60 minutes of football, I mean, you're doing pretty well. Obviously, Conal Bergen stepped up, scored the 5 points to make up for it. But I think that's going to be an absolute cracking final, because I'd said a few weeks ago that I thought Rathcoffey were the closest to Grange, and from what I'd seen, the fitness, the physicality of Rathcoffey matches Grange at the moment. So I just think it'll be a cracker next week.
Ger, will Kappa feel a little bit of a grief for not being awarded a free for what appeared to be a foul on was it Shane Smith in the dying moments of that particular game?
I didn't see this game, but I did see that clip all right, and in isolation, to be honest, yeah, it looks as if Kappa did have fair appeals for a free with that last shot. I think it would have been brought right up in front of the goal as well. It was a late tackle with the ball going wide, so I think it would have been brought up in front of the post. So judging one in isolation, though, is hard. You probably need to get a feel for how the referee was looking at things throughout the game and how he was consistently calling things. But yeah, just in isolation, there would appear as if Kappa certainly had appeals to or grounds to feel aggrieved.
So that Tom Cross Transport Junior Football Championship final is in Cedar St. Convis Park on Saturday week at 5 p.m. That's Grange Nolvan versus Rathcoffey. And on the Friday night in Moorfield, it's Robertstown versus Ballykelly in the Junior A quarter-final. Ballykelly will be very happy to be there, Ger, but will Robertstown be disappointed that they're not maybe in the junior final proper?
Yeah, probably. Look, we talked about that Group B, still there on the screen there, and there was always going to be somebody out of that top four teams with Rathcoffey, Garvan, Kappa, and Robertstown. Whoever missed out on that was going to feel, hard done by. It was just unfortunate, but what a win for Ballykelly. I mean, we're talking there about the fixtures all over the weekend. That's probably the best win, really, as the most eye-catching final result, and all the more so considering I think there were 7 or 8 points down, which, we're talking about some comebacks there. Sarsfields had the full half to do it. I think Ballykelly came from was 7 points down with about 7 or 8 minutes to go. So incredible turnaround for them, incredible win. They've had a lot of heavy defeats this year. You see they're minus 74 in the score difference. The only team they defeated in that group stage was Ardclough. So to come along and beat a side who were in the junior final last year was just an outstanding win for them. Obviously going into the final, you'd have to say the Robertstown are big, strong favourites there, but Ballykelly on the back of that will be absolutely looking forward to that one. And if Robertstown aren't 100% at it, then Ballykelly will be licking their lips. But Robertstown as well, just to mention, has it 9 goals in that game. I think it was 10 the previous week against Rathcoffey. Is 19 goals involving their 2 games. So we can maybe expect a few goals in that final when they meet up against Ballykelly.
Yeah, one to look forward to as well. And then finally, as far as the Tom Cross Transport Junior Championships are concerned, Ger, the team of the week.
Yeah, so we have Kappa's Mikey Fahy between the posts, Owen McDonald of Rathcoffey, Callum Stork of Garvan, and Oisin O'Queel of Kappa in the full-back line. Mark Connolly of Garvan, alongside 2 Grange men in the half-back line. That's Dylan Costigan at centre-back, who takes the Glenn Carter jersey. Where's Glenn Carter this week? Dylan Costigan steps in there. So, yeah.
A week off.
But Dylan Costigan's in the Glenn Carter position, and Brian Cullen then completes the half-back line. Into midfield there, Conal Bergen of Grange alongside Brian McNally of Kappa. Half-forward line then is 2 coffee men in the wing-forward positions, Tom Moriarty and Conor Harris, either side of Tomas Cullen of Grange. And further forward then in the full-forward line, David Butler of Garvan, Ethan O'Donoghue of Rathcoffey, and Jack Mulligan of Kappa.
So that's our look at the men's side of the game. Quickly then looking at the LGFA, the senior finals all the finals are coming up next weekend. Sorry, the weekend after next, rather. Jared, you saw the semi-final there between, who was it? That was between Kilcullen, Lawrence and Sarsfields.
Yeah. I don't know how much you could read into it because, my God, it was a horrendous night. The rain, literally just as I stepped out of the car, it started just drizzling rain, and then it just got progressively heavier and heavier and heavier and wetter and colder. And it was miserable by the end. But in fairness, Lawrence has dug it out. Sarsfield's probably feeling a little bit aggrieved. They had a goal disallowed for what, to be honest, I thought was fairly clear square ball. It was just as if St. Lawrence's goalkeeper, I think Chloe Wright, she was down receiving treatment, and it was a stoppage of well over a minute, and they didn't actually kind of signal for the disallowed goal until the St. Lawrence's keeper were back to her feet. So I think it was probably the delay of the signalling of the decision that probably frustrated the Sarsfield's sideline as much as anything. They felt then as well there was maybe a free kick awarded to Lawrence's in the build-up of the actual kind of crucial goal as well. It was kind of went against the Sarsfield's team, but look, that's the way it is. It was a tight championship game, so one of the sides was going to feel aggrieved. Lawrence's took their goal well, and as former Wicklow All-Ireland Junior winner Marie Keatley, who was kind of very important in the win. She scored 1, 4 or 5 very accurate with her frees and had a really good game, and as a good addition to that St. Lawrence's team with already a number of county players on it, of course.
Yeah, indeed. And in the other game, of course, it kind of went to form with Eadstown defeating Kilcullen 3-6 to 5 points. Eadstown got an early goal in that particular one. And again, on a terrible night, the same night as you were watching the Larrys and Sarsfield game, Eadstown just held on to too much there. They had that bit more experience. But this is a very, very young Kilcullen side, and they will be back, and some very good players on that team. But Eadstown still backbone by some county players and future county players, and that it's going to be a repeat of last year's final between St. Lawrence's and Easttown. That's, I think, on Friday, the 3rd. And the relegation final is between Kill and Confey. We'll have more about that in episode 8 of the what have we got next week as well. So in the Short Grass podcast. Moving quickly along then, I suppose, leaving the Gaelic side of things, Ger, club rugby this weekend, still a difficult start to the season for Athy.
Yeah, the Boyne defeated there this weekend. They had a very narrow defeat the previous week against Cullow. So they had 2 rounds in and 2 defeats. So they have a home tie again this weekend. So yeah, they probably want to get a win on the board pretty soon, or else it's kind of a season that could get away from them. They were down near the bottom of the top Leinster League for large parts of last season before finding a bit of form late in the year that ultimately they're on then to win a Towns Cup as well. So yeah, they look to get motoring fairly quickly, and a home tie on Saturday would be a good way of doing that.
Yeah, certainly. And then Kildare, good comeback by them, and a bonus point for Newbridge.
Yeah, Newbridge going up in Division. They had a fantastic year last year, didn't they? Newbridge, I think Kildare are coming down as well, so they're both kind of coming from different divisions and meeting at the same division this year, Division 2A. So yeah, Kildare, a good comeback victory from them. They had a tough year last year, so and they looked obviously to have a better form this year. And yeah, Newbridge a higher level. They had a really progressive season last year and had a really enjoyable season. They came through, and there was the makeup of that division. They had 2 sections to that division last year. They had to qualify out of 1 section and then a second one before getting promotion this year. So yeah, they did really well last year, and at least they got something for their efforts in the opening round.
And as far as I know, the AIL starts this weekend, so we'll be keeping an eye on Naas and indeed Barnhall, and there will be reports on those matches in the Kildare Nationalist next Tuesday as well. Club Kildare, Gerard, good win for the under-20s.
Yeah, 6-3 against Kerry, wasn't it? Yeah, so it was tight enough there the last 20 minutes or so, but Club Kildare got a couple of goals there. Keane Brunton, Mark Canavan got 2, Moses Uchendo, Moses Alibay, and Brent Culbert. Yeah, so that was a good win and high-scoring game, and there's been plenty of high-scoring game for those under-20s that caught the last half an hour of one of their games recently against Cove Ramblers. It was that they finished 4-4. So yeah, there's plenty of goals. And if anybody wants to pop along on one of the Saturday afternoons before the end of their season coming up shortly, they are involved in high scoring games. And I mentioned too for the under-17 girls team as well. Yeah. They kind of plugged away. It's the first year that Club Kildare fielded the girls team in the National League, and they were kind of behind the 8 ball starting off. They didn't get kind of noticed that they were being entered into the league until very short on, so they were kind of scrambling around to put a team together. It's a very young side, and they haven't got a win yet, but they got a draw there again at the weekend. That's maybe their 3rd or 4th draw, so maybe that first win is just around the corner before the end of the season.
Yeah, interesting indeed. And of course, there's more big sports action in Kildare at the weekend because, Tommy, on Saturday we have Curragh racing, and then again on Sunday as well. So you look forward to that one, I'm sure. I know you won't have time. You're covering too many games indeed.
I don't have time for horse racing anymore, unfortunately.
There you go. Yeah, two big days of racing in the Curragh again this weekend, Ger.
Yeah, and it's just I suppose it's this time of the year when any of those kind of horse racing aficionados, their thoughts are probably turning to the jumps game there, which big Kerry National there this weekend in Stowell as well, another one of the big festivals as well, and kind of is it Downpatrick then around the middle of October when it kind of feels like the jump season really kickstarts. But yeah, no, the Curragh, a couple of days there, and I think Naas have a big day as well to wrap up their season coming up as well in the next week or two as well. So yeah, still some flat racing to be enjoyed for those who that's their thing.
Absolutely. So that's our look at all things sport in Kildare in the past week and coming up over this weekend. Let's hope everybody has an enjoyable weekend. Good luck to those who are playing in the finals. Good luck to those who are playing in the semi-finals. And we will have reports on all of those, as I say, in the Kildare Nationalist on Tuesday next. And the 2 semi-finals and the 2 finals on Sunday in hurling are on Clubber TV this weekend as well. So that's all of us. For me, Pat Costello, and then thanks again. Yes.
Before we go, I must say as well, I meant to say this at the beginning, the Field of Dreams day that they had in Kilcullen at the weekend, I popped over to it and it was absolutely fantastic. It was brilliant. They had mini games going on the new pitches. There were hundreds of people there just walking around looking at the games. They had a bandstand that had, gospel choirs on it, and they had different musicians on it. And then inside they had the Tailteann Cup, the Lee McCarthy Cup, They had the Joe McDonagh Cup, and they had
Leinster Football Championship. Craig Lennox from Loud was there as well, wasn't he? Did the Leinster Trophy too. So.
Yeah,
was that the Leinster Trophy there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I didn't.
That's the Delaney Cup.
The Delaney Cup. I was chatting to Craig Lennon, lads, and I was pretty sure I said to him, I was hoping you weren't going to bring the Aldrich Cup. I had Aldrich in my head, so he was probably thinking, "Who's this guy? Who's this lad?" But it was really good. I went in. I was chatting. Aaron Masterson was there. I think Darren Melville was there as well.
That's right.
And
James Burke, I think as well. Yeah.
James Burke, sorry, was absolutely there. I got a quick picture with the. So I asked one of the organisers, "Do you mind if I get a quick picture with the Tailteann Cup and the Joe McDonagh Cup?" And he said, "Oh yeah, sure. The Liam McCarthy is there as well." And I was like, "No, I just want the two that Kildare won." And he looked at me, he's like, "What? Do you not want a picture with the Liam McCarthy Cup?" I said, "Not really. I kind of just want the two that Kildare won." You
should have said that's next year's cup.
But I wasn't able to hold them because the Joe McDonagh Cup was a little bit battered, so I had to put them in the table in front. But they were brilliant. They were everybody there that day. The barbecue was going. They were it was just fair play to them. Best luck to them going forward, because it's a huge effort and massive to get that over the line. If anybody gets a chance, go down and have a look at it, because it really is impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said indeed. And my apologies for neglecting that throughout the program. So, as I was about to say, I'm Pat Costello, and thanks again to Tommy and to Ger. We'll see you again next week.